A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Why is it, you think, that men are so reluctant to access resources and help on a range of men's issues? Well, our next guest has been wrestling with why Aussie men don't reach out for help in times of trouble, even when there is a support base in place. Paul Smith is National Director for Wesleyan Men. It must be a great time for men's events, because one of those to draw attention to is called Man Camp on Queensland's Sunshine Coast, 12th to the 14th of September. Paul Smith has been Director of Shed Happens for 10 years, and as I say, National Director of Wesleyan Men. He's joining us. Hey, Paul, welcome along to 2020.
Thank you, Neil. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Paul, Aussie men, there's a bit of a reputation, isn't there, for not seeking help, not wanting help, even, resisting help. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's been, such an issue for such a long time, and I don't think it's ever going away. We seem to be trying to address it from multiple fronts. And I think we're getting better in certain areas, but there's still this huge gap that men just still have this innate inability to reach out when needed.
There's a bit of a caricature, isn't there? She'll be right, slack on seeing the doctor, never even calling the ambulance. You're having a heart attack and you're saying, no, I'll be fine. This reluctance to seek counselling, it does seem to characterise Aussie men.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of my biggest my experience is that the biggest issue relates to around fear. And there's a risk there, of being seen as weak. And that's the one thing we don't want men to do. We want to put a brave front on when we're speaking to other men. We don't want people to think, oh, you're weak. And so if we feel like there's a risk of being judged as weak, we're not going to step into that battlefield.
Do you think there is something that happens in a Christian camaraderie when men get together? Does it break any of that sort of caricature down, or is it still a process, no doubt, through the lives of men, but as men connect with one another in perhaps a more deep way than they might ordinarily outside of church circles?
Yeah, I could probably draw some parallels to my military experience if you that I kind of noticed myself. I did 20 years in the Australian Army, and what I realised that no doubt the bonds that you build in that type of environment are very strong, very strong. And but when I look at the times that we would get together, there would still be this front of, I'm still, and they'd talk about a story that would, basically allow you to have the impression they're still strong, they're still doing well in life. But so it's really hard to get to the deep issue, hard to break through that bravado. And what I found with Christian men, because there's no need to have the bravado of being strong, you can actually go deeper, quicker. And so we're both in battles. One's physical, one's spiritual, but there's no shame in being weak in a spiritual battle because our enemies, they're very different. So, in a Christian context, I feel like in answering your question, Neil, that to be able to go deeper, to get to the bottom of an issue that is going to hit the core is easier, but we still struggle.
You talk about a fear of being judged. There's also, isn't there, the impression that you get, well, if I tell you what my problem is, you're just going to tell me how to fix it. Sometimes that's not always the best fix, is it? To just be told, hey, this is how you fix it, or toughen up. What are your thoughts here around the fact that we don't like to be told?
I think, it's we certainly don't. I think, like, people I'm in my 60s now, and I think we are in a unique time in this place in time because our fathers, when you look at how they were brought up by their fathers, it was all about the land, it was all about providing, doing good for your family, just get on with it. Don't let little things that would, hold you back. Just suck it up, don't cry, all those sort of things. We now have the privilege of seeing what's happening with our children growing up, and we're looking at two different areas or the perspectives. And I think to be able to say, you need to suck it up, you need a big voice, don't cry. I think we're starting to realise that's actually detrimental to the health of the mental health of people, and we're sort of seeing that, and that's why there's this big issue with suicide and everything in different circles. But I think we're starting to break that down, but it's a long and slow and tedious process.
We talk about friendship, and there can be boundaries there. In Australia, we call it mateship. It's a great way to be able to reflect on our relationship one another, but sometimes we don't want to overstep the boundaries of mateship. I'm careful what sort of advice I might offer you, but I'm wanting you to be careful about the sort of advice you want to offer me too, because we're mates here. But is there a different dimension to mateship that actually might be an open friendship that might be able to discuss some of these deeper issues?
Yeah, good question. I think there's different levels of mateship. I think depending upon, if you have mates that go down the pub, you'll probably get shallow responses, and you might get the guys that are well-meaning to say, well, this is what I think you should do. I can see your problem and this is how you should fix it. And you'll get guys like that. I think then if you have the mates where, you've been able to, you feel like you're comfortable calling them at 3 a.m. in the morning because they'll pick up your phone. Well, that's a deeper level of mateship. And I think there you can rely on someone to perhaps provide you more than shallow support of telling you what to do to fix it, but maybe spend some time with some tangible support, whether that's meals, being there, just caring, holding, whatever, praying, whatever that is. So I think there's the different levels of mateship.
And when you've got a camp situation, you're away and you're going to be there multiple days, multiple nights, and there's the opportunity to forge deeper friendships. Hey, I love the theme of your camp. Your theme is, nothing is more dangerous to our enemy than a man whose heart has come alive. The idea of hearts coming alive and the camaraderie, the mateship, the way that we are bonded together under God's hand. What are your thoughts here for what you're aiming to do with the man camp?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is to show what's available from a strength perspective. And most guys think, I'm fairly strong, and but when you have a bond of like a group of four, where that these are guys that you can rely on for anything, there's a strength that's there that if you've never experienced it, it's hard to know what's available. So what we're trying to do through this camp is to provide multiple activities where guys can interact within that group of four, so they actually start to build the bonds, build the strength of connection of what a small group can do, a trusted group of friends whose hearts are there to help you find God in your story, to help you to know where to get the right kind of help from, and to make that a confidential, safe place. And so we're trying to create this position of strength that's available for men, so that beyond the camp, they'll have this available to them, and hopefully either use some or part of it going forward. That's our prayer anyway.
Finding God in our story, or finding us in His story. The thought of a leadership focus. I'm intrigued that you've chosen a passage in Ephesians to make as a theme for your camp as well. You're going to be getting a focus on Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12. A real leadership passage in the Bible. What are you hoping to have men understand about that?
There's a couple of areas of that. One, because it's to do with the fivefold ministry, one area is to help people identify how God's hardwired them in one of these 5 areas. And so this could be aligned to your calling. We'll look at some spiritual gifts in there as well, but we want to help people to see how that they have been hardwired differently, slightly different, which means we're going to view life's perspective slightly differently to others. And then the goal with the groups is that we would actually have different people with different giftings in each of the groups. And so what you end up with is this dynamic group of people who actually view life slightly differently because of the way God's hardwired them. And then it helps them to see God in their life. Because sometimes if you're caught up in your own stuff, it's really hard to see how God could possibly be doing stuff in my life because my life's a mess. But when you have someone who can come in with a different perspective and show you how God might be orchestrating things, it just builds confidence. It builds, what we want to do is for people to walk away with what I call a faith anchor. So somewhere where they can go, I just know God was real for me right then. And so I keep coming back to know and trust in God. And so we're trying to use the different giftings to show a perspective of how God is real in each person's life. And so that's the plan.
So God orchestrating all sorts of issues in a man's life, and even though things seem untidy now, sorting those out and discovering that you can develop a faith anchor, powerful concepts. Hey, you've got limited places for the man camp that's coming up. No doubt these will, I guess, sell out quick, if that's the way you use that sort of terminology to talk about how these places will be filled. It's going to be at Currimundi on the Sunshine Coast. And you know what? For listeners all over Australia, this time of year, you might be thinking, hey, that might be the perfect place for me to be, 12th to the 14th of September. It is a camp, Sunshine Coast Recreational Centre. Interesting too around camps. Sometimes we think a men's camp might need to be fairly rugged, but you've got a facility there that's got air-conditioned rooms and on-site catering with great food. So I think you're probably going to tick a box there. A lot of men will be thinking, that's the way it ought to be in the 21st century. Hey, for people wanting to connect, here's the website, mancamp.org.au, mancamp.org.au. It's on the Sunshine Coast, 12th to the 14th of September. And just before I let you go, Paul, I understand you're writing a book at the moment. Any thoughts on how that's looking or how things are progressing?
I have a draft, and I thought it was a good draft until I gave it to an editor, and now I'm redoing it again. It was surrounded by the concept that there's all these different passages in the Bible of that, what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was just a consolidated list of all of those? And so I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll just go through the New Testament and start writing them all out. And so I did this, and I put them all into an Excel spreadsheet. There are 325 commands of what to do and 125 of what not to do. And so I ended up grouping them, and then I put scriptures and I put life applications. So it's about how do you apply life? How do you apply biblical commands to everyday life? And it's just been an amazing journey that God's taken me on. I'm so excited about the book, but it's going to be a little while off yet. It's certainly taken up a bit of my headspace, but I love it.
You know what? It's not easy, is it? Paul Smith, who's National Director for Wesleyan Men, working on the book, but mancamp.org.au to find out the details about how you can be part of Man Camp at Currimundi on the Sunshine Coast, 12th to the 14th of September. Hey, Paul, thanks so much for giving us an update today on 2020.
Really appreciate your time, Neil. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.